Hi, everybody. This is Dugan Bridges with PopDoc. I have with me the filmmaker of Melody Makers, Leslie Ann Cole. Thank you, Leslie Ann, for joining the show.
Thanks for having me.
You know, and watching your documentary, the first thing that popped out to me was that it was just really enjoyable to watch. Like, you know, a lot of the short doc, or this isn't a short doc, but a lot of docs that come through the film festival system, I mean, you can see them, or they could be kind of depressing, or there's a lot of justice out there about, wrongs against people. And it was just kind of refreshing to be able to watch a documentary that not only was really informational, but was just on a fun topic. So, what was it to you that attracted you to this subject that you said, I have to make a feature about this?
Well, first of all, thank you for that, because it's, like you said, it's not a hard-boiled documentary. It's a lighthearted documentary and a look back at a unique period in music history. So what attracted to me to the subject matter initially was the photography and the main subject, Barrie Wentzell, who shot for Melody Maker magazine, which was the forerunner to Rolling Stone.
Yeah.
For 10 years, 1965 to 1975. And he amassed this incredible, iconic rock and roll photo archive. And so that's what really compelled me to make the documentary. It was him and the stories behind the photos.
So how did you stumble upon that? Like, did you grow up reading Melody Maker? What was the event?
No, actually, what's interesting is I didn't actually know about Melody Maker magazine. We didn't receive it in Canada. It wasn't widely circulated in Canada. I know New York, New Jersey, obviously the UK, and France. I mean, they acquired Melody Maker magazine, but I personally did not know about the magazine. The documentary started as kind of an intimate artist portrait about the photographer and the photos. And that was like the kind of the idea behind the project initially. And then Barrie Wentzell kept saying to me, oh, you have to go to London, you have to interview my mates, my colleagues on Melody Maker. So I pulled back the film, received some development funding, and went to the UK. I received development funding and I went to the UK. And I went into the British Library and I met with the journalists that he worked with, and I met others that worked behind the scenes during this essentially the zeitgeist of rock and roll in the UK and America. And it became this bigger project about Barrie as the chief contributing photographer, and about Melody Maker magazine that became sort of revered as the Bible of rock and roll in 1965, right through to its demise.
So a lot of our filmmakers will be interested in kind of how your project snowballed in development. So it started with this project. Was it going to be a feature on Barrie, or was it going to be a short on Barrie?
It was going to be a short feature about Barrie Wentzell, and then it became a 95-minute. The director's cut is 93 minutes. Yeah. And then 78-minute version is what is being circulated in America and other places in the world through House of Film. So yeah, it was intended to be a much smaller, kind of more intimate film. And then it just, like I said, I received development money from the Ontario Creates, or OMDC here in Ontario.
Yeah. And was that after London. You found Barrie?
Oh yeah. So Barrie was first. So Barrie, I conducted it's very indie, this film. I mean, I conducted the interviews initially with Barrie, interviewed him over the course of about 2 or 3 days, and filmed his archive. So I wanted not just to sort of slap up JPEGs in the background with the talking head. So I actually filmed these large format photos, and I filmed the art, like the entire archive, negatives contact sheets, analog photography, because I wanted to sort of riff on it in post. I had a clear vision about how I wanted to have the kind of photos fill a 30-foot screen, and I successfully did that. So
you did, yeah. It was, yeah. It's beautiful. I really preferred and didn't think about it till you brought it up now, that you're getting, angles on the photography in space, whether it's on a table or on a wall, with shadows and light, and feels very real and historic, opposed to just the kind of 2D flat digital, throwing it up on screen and moving it around and whatnot. Definitely worked for
Thank
the
you.
piece,
Yeah.
So now that was a nice artistic touch you added to it. What were some of the biggest challenges in making this film, from development to filming it to post-production?
The biggest challenge, I mean, it took 8 years for me to finish this film.
Wow.
So the biggest challenge was I would get, the development money to develop the project about, so it was about Melody Maker magazine and this photographer who shot for Melody Maker for that 10-year period, and kind of how Melody Maker grew from being just a musician's trade paper. Really, it was from 1928. It was founded, and it was a trade paper for musicians. So, it was just really not having the funding, the production financing.
Yeah.
I never had production financing. What I did was I managed to assemble a cut, and then I sold it to CBC. Bruce Cowley, the commissioning editor, loved it, and they gave me money, which allowed me to finish it in post-production. And they wanted the 78-minute cut. And the other challenge was, believe it or not, I still shudder when I think about this, but I had actually finished cutting the film.
Yeah.
It was completely assembled. It took me a year because I had 200 hours of footage, because it had been shot over this long period of time, and the archive was immense. And then Time Inc. bought IPC, the publisher of Melody Maker magazine. And when that happened, all of a sudden, it was a game changer. Deal that I had negotiated with IPC, the publisher of Melody Maker, to use Barrie's photographs as they appeared on the covers of Melody Maker magazine, and inside they had said, you know what, you can use all of Barrie's photos, no problem, but you can't use other photographers' photos. And I said, no problem, I don't need to. So I had carefully, as you can see, there's Melody Maker magazine, and there's even some articles that accompanied his photos. And all of a sudden, I had to stop because I had to renegotiate with the Time Inc. for rights. It was just crazy, and they wanted
this is not a common story,
They wanted this. Oh my goodness, they wanted this enormous fee per page, and it was just prohibitive. So I thought I would have to gut the film at that point, go back in after editing it over the course of a year, go back in and recut the film and gut it of Melody Maker magazine content. So essentially, in the end, it was a huge victory. I wore them out.
Yeah.
I mean, I just, I sent them cuts, and I said, this is an homage. I was like the true indie, passionate, appealing to lawyers. And I'm like, this is an homage to Melody Maker in this time in musical history, and I'll give you, a credit, or can you just honor the deal that I had with IPC? And in the end, I really truly wore them out because I received a phone call from a lawyer. Oh, and I was sending stuff to New York. I mean, I was sending cuts, and so they could see what I was doing. And then I received a phone call from a lawyer, and he said, Leslie Ann, you can use the paper. We need to put a disclaimer in the credits to say that Time Inc. has nothing to do with this film. We don't endorse it. We are not part of it. Da, 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 da. And I'm like, okay, that's it. And they're like, yeah, that's it. So
Congratulations, because to win a battle like that against a gigantic corporation like Time Inc., just as an individual, is almost unheard of. Documentarians, if you're just, starting out, this is a lesson to be learned, is to
Oh
have
yeah.
your paperwork in order, get
Oh
people to
my
sign
goodness.
release forms for this exact reason, because they're okay with it at the time, then they come back later and don't want to be a part of something. It can ruin your entire documentary.
Oh my goodness. What a learning curve for me it was. This was my first feature documentary, and it was, for sure, you get your rights and clearances, have your, agreements all in place for everybody that you interview, all of your content. And there's a lot of ways that I worked around the music as well.
With the music, what do you mean? What did you have to work around with that?
Well, I realized, this was another meeting I had in LA. I went to meet one of the heads of Warner Music, and I was all excited about this idea I had for this app. It would be people could download it, and if they let me use the music for free, it would promote the sale of the music. They would get all the proceeds from the music, because people would listen to the story and hear Jimi Hendrix or hear, Pink Floyd, and they'd be like, oh, I gotta buy that too. And they just looked at me like I was from outer space. They didn't want any part of that. So I ended up going to the musicians who are actually featured in the film. Uh-huh. So Jethro Tull, Ian Anderson gave me traditional songs. So songs that he had played the flute to, that he had riffed on, that were part of his personal musical archive. When you hear it, you know it's Jethro Tull.
That is so cool.
It was part of the public domain, the song. So I was able to avoid publishing fees. And then he negotiated a flat rate with me. And I did the same with Fairport Convention, Judy Dybel, Pink Floyd, through Peter Whitehead's video. I did a lot of, I learned a lot through this process.
Well, that was, so, in making a documentary, problem solving is, the biggest thing you could possibly do. And, sure. With your licensing, that was a great business idea, but of course they're going to charge you $25,000 or more to license some of those songs.
Believe it or not, I license songs. I can't say for how much, but you wouldn't believe what I licensed songs for. And then what I did is I worked with a composer that I've worked with in my history in dance theater. I was a choreographer and a modern dancer before I moved into film. And he's a really good composer and a multi-instrumental artist. And so he brought in musicians, and he had this old mixing board from the 1960s. So it had this really authentic analog sound. So we would bring in, a guitar player who could play like Jimi Hendrix. We would bring in a drummer who could bang away like Keith Moon. And he knew the musicians to bring in, and he would give them a taste of what we needed. And then they would just have a heart attack playing, the music so he actually, it worked out really well, because it was such an eclectic period, having a composer, score the film instead of it sounding like turning a radio. It actually really, really worked. It has a really nice aesthetic of sound checks and crowd swells and the snap, crackle, and pop of vinyl. He really did a really great job with the sound, with the music.
So with getting to interview musicians and having some high profile ones that I'm sure was really exciting. Who were some of your favorites to interview? What was it like, to be talking to some people you've listened to their music all your life?
Well, there was so many. And there was so many I chased, because again, I was working on no budget. So I had a strategy, and my strategy was to track their tours, to track what their tour schedule was. So whenever they were in my province in Canada, I would then contact them. And Pete Townsend and I kept missing each other. It was kind of ridiculous. And then Eric Burden was doing a blues festival in Ottawa. So I pulled a small crew together. We went and met him in Ottawa. Ian Anderson, I met him in a hotel in Toronto. He was here doing a gig at Massey Hall. Yes, we're doing a concert in Hamilton. I chased them out there. So that's kind of how I captured them.
I had just watching it, assumed that you went to London and just all these were set up and, you know, you were able to meet with these people because maybe the connections at Melody Maker helped you out, or Newberry reached out to them.
Yeah,
but it
for
doesn't
sure
sound
it
like,
did.
okay.
For sure it did with Peter Whitehead, who's now gone. Chris Sangardes, who's one of the best heavy metal sound engineers and record producers in the world. He's now gone. Jeff Dexter, all of the journalists I interviewed in London. So I did film in the UK twice. And the rest, I chased. Eric Burden is so cool. He was the cool cat. Yeah, I was told I had 20 minutes with him and I ended up getting a 2-hour interview. So I have some great footage that I want to repurpose. Like I'm going to release it on my app. You know, I don't know if you saw the version 1, but I'll send you a free promo code for that. But you download it to any Apple device. Got like 200 photos, embedded video, rock and roll trivia games, picture puzzles. So I took some of Barrie's pictures and like a Rubik's Cube, I took them apart and then people can assemble them. It's a lot of fun.
The fact that you have an app and games and photos loaded onto the app is very thorough. Have you done this all yourself, or who came on to help you with that?
I came up with the idea in about 2000 when I interviewed Barrie, so probably around 2006 or 8. I thought about the interactive immersive component, and again, it was this weird thing. I was in LA on a beach in Paradise Cove, and they told me I had to take my drink into this kind of tent thing. So I went in there and there was this man sitting there and we just started talking to each other. And he had just come from Boston to LA to build, it was right at the wake of them building apps for TV shows. And I just started talking to him about how I had this idea for this documentary. And so Steve, this guy originally helped me design it, and then I executed it with a very young bunch of artists who are into IDM and gaming. They're designers of games, really. And I found them somehow, I can't remember, through a friend in Florida, and they actually helped me execute the design. So we're just going to do an Android version now of it, but that's how I'm going to. So Eric Burden, cool cat. You know, there's stuff he told me that is, you know, 2 things specifically I remember that aren't in the film. One, he talked about a life-changing moment for him when he went to San Quentin with Muhammad Ali.
What?
To sing for the prisoners, to entertain the prisoners in San Quentin. And he said that it was a life-changing experience for him. And then he actually got really emotional when I asked if he regret that he said, I always wanted to meet Amy Winehouse. He said she had the voice and the soul of an old black woman. That's how he said.
Well, we only have a couple minutes left. Why don't you tell me what's next for the project, and you know, where can people find you, and what do you have going on next? Okay,
well, the film's out there. So if you're in America or in the UK, it's available through Cleopatra Entertainment. It's on Amazon. It's on multiple platforms. The downloadable book is available worldwide, and that is on Apple Books. And the easiest way to find me is through melodymakersmovie.com. So I put an S at the end of Melody Makers to avoid litigation. And so the Apple book and the link to the Apple book and a direct feed to the film is on my website. And I mean, you can find it everywhere. So what I hope to do, Duggan, is to release a version 2 of a lot of B-roll, a lot of great interviews that are in my film, and probably a version 3. A lot of stuff that didn't make it into the film just because, you know, it didn't serve the trajectory of the story.
Great. Well, everyone can watch your 10-minute teaser on PopDoc on our channel. So check that out and then go see the feature that Leslie Ann directed as it's available online. And it was a lot of fun to watch, which
Thank
is,
you.
you know, hard to do in a documentary. You know, a lot of them aren't fun. So treat yourself to it. And Leslie Ann, thank you for coming on the Popcast.
And I am on Instagram and Twitter through Melody
Yes.
Maker's Movie or my name, Leslie Ann Coles. So, yeah.